Sorry about that, guys.
Sorry.
We wish we were better dancers.
Sorry. We're just like,
So
Lex and I took karate from the same loser back in the 80s, and we always joke about how his blocks were and stuff. So that was me channeling that guy. Rex Kwon-Do would have been an upgrade.
Oh yeah,
upgrade from
Hey Kelly, did you just refer to a shot glass as dainty?
Dainty.
I'm sorry, I did.
That's
it's okay. We're cutting that out.
you're dead. Dainty.
Well, compared to how you guys drink, it is dainty.
Oh, dude.
Okay, you can't argue with them there, but
No, you can. But we're throwing down. Anyway.
No, when was the last time you drank from a shot glass here?
Shots you shoot, and I don't shoot whiskey.
No.
No, whiskey's meant to be enjoyed. Hey, everybody, we're going to do PDQ and A today. So we've got some questions. Now, one thing I like, if you have some questions, particularly like SQL questions are a great example, or questions that involve kind of a lot of setup. It is nice to get those in advance, just because if we can answer them, there are sometimes we'll get a question on the spot, and it's like, well, it's going to take me 10 minutes to set that up, and it's not really, hey, go ahead and just listen to your favorite song whilst I do this. No.
Shoot them in early, we do a little work, and then
throw them in early, and then, of course, there's others that the answer is just, no, sorry. But anyway, let's go ahead and
jump into it,
move forward.
First question of the day is SQL related. It's from Monica K. When writing SQL reports, is there a way to include data from custom fields?
Yes, and sorry that we didn't mention this in the advanced reporting last week. Obviously, when you're doing, we mentioned, when you add a custom field, like you can see over here, go ahead and show the screen. We have a custom field called Cost Center. I'm going to hit Control, comma to open up the preferences and go to the custom fields. And you'll see we've got one custom field. It's a text type called Cost Center. That means that goes into, we said, the computer table when you're building a report, a basic report. And what Monica's stating is, when you're building a basic report, I can see under the computer table there's Cost Center, but it's not in the table in a report, and I'll show you that.
So in SQL, the reference would be to a...
you got to do it. Well, you're going to have to do at least one join, depending on how you want this. I've got two examples, and Annie, I believe, made these available in the extra content available. Here's example one. I'm going to right-click on this report. This is a SQL report. I'll hit Define. Remember, when you double-click on a report, it actually just runs the report and shows you the results. Here's a very basic SQL. You might want to zoom in on that, JJ.
Give me a minute. Sorry, I had to rebuild all this.
I don't care. The instrument has yet to be invented that can.
Let me show what happens when I zoom in right
that can
now.
detect, let alone measure how much.
This is what happens when I zoom in right now, because I rearranged all of our stuff. So give me a second.
All right.
So let me just explain this SQL. All right. So first of all, remember, we do have some cheat sheets before you touch that. What you probably did, you probably came down to computers, selected the computers, and then noticed there's my custom items aren't in here. That's correct. The basic report, we're actually generating that computer table is really a computer view.
And it's linked,
Yeah, we've already got the joins and stuff like that. Here, it's a little bit more manual on SQL, and this is where you have to know your joins. So this first example, I'm saying select the computers.name, computers table, and then there's a couple of custom fields. They have their native name of custom items, custom computer items, and custom computer values. And you'll be able to see the relationship by highlighting those. If I just go down to custom computer items, you'll see there's a custom computer item ID. Once again, this is where you kind of need to understand SQL. So these are the three tables that I want to show, or the three fields. The three fields. Thank you. From three different tables, and then I'm doing the join, where you join the custom computer values has computer ID, and that joins to the computers table, and then you're joining the custom computer items with the to the custom computer values, and then I'm saying, and the computer item's name is Cost Center. Okay, so when I run that, I'll have three columns: the name of the computer, the name of, in this case, Cost Center,
and that's the custom field there.
And now, if you don't want to show that, let's say you only want two fields to show, and you want cost center up here at top, that's where you would do a sub-select. That's an example 2. A little less to write there, but here we're just saying only show me the computer name and then show me the computer values, and we're calling that, notice I use that as.
So we're naming the actual column there, cost center.
Yep, we're saying as cost center. There we go. Custom computer values as cost center. And then we're doing join the custom computers with computer ID, using computer ID with the computers table. And then we still have to be able to find out what the name of that is. That's where, instead of doing the join, because we don't want 3 columns, we're using a sub-select, and we're saying where the computer item ID is in, and that's in is where you're going to do a sub-select, select, yada yada, custom computer ID from custom computer items where value like cost center. Hitting run like that,
there you go.
Then you see it that way.
Now, the other, it's simple SQL, guys. So there's a bunch of different references online you can get for that. So,
there's a good book. It's there's a great book. I think it's from O'Reilly, and it's just using SQLite, I believe. Great reference, and we do use SQLite, so recommend doing that.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do your custom SQL, Monica, and anybody else, those are 2 examples. And we do have that out there in the custom or in the extra content. Is that correct? All right.
Excellent.
As far as I'm aware.
I hope that if that answers your question.
I
hopefully,
think that
Monica.
Definitely answers.
Monica still have to have that drinking contest with you.
And we actually have a 2-part question from Valerie B. First part, what is the best procedure for creating scheduled auto-deployment packages for environments with a mix of deep freeze and non-deep freeze clients? I don't see a way to duplicate and edit schedules to target a different collection library, for example. Do I have to recreate these 2 schedules for every auto-deployment package I manage?
Okay, there's probably a few answers to this one.
Okay, so first of all, right, to be able to deploy to it, right, you got to thaw it, and then when you're done, you got to freeze it. That's really
for deep freeze.
For deep freeze, yes. So, I mean, that's the kind
And
of
she's got a mix of them.
Okay.
So we saw this question come in, and there's several ways of doing it. Now, yes, if the way you're talking about it, I see that you've got 2 schedules, and you're like, I don't want to have 2 schedules, one that points Java to the deep freeze computers, and one that points to the non-deep freeze, and yada yada. How can I do this in one? We came up with an idea, and it turns out Stephen Valdinger, one of our regulars here, does that very thing. Do you have that screenshot that Stephen sent in?
I don't, because it was in Microsoft Word format.
okay.
I can't put it on here. But.
Okay, so basically, you're going to use conditions. Let's try this. Let me see if I can hurry and let's go. Let me just try this really quick. See if I can get the idea that we were trying to convey. Anyway, I'm going to go to the package library. We'll just do 7-zip since it's near to hand. We're going to create a new schedule for auto deployment. 7-zip, yada yada. And we'll just do the targets for link to PDQ inventory collection, and we're going to say
old versions of 7-zip, yeah?
Yeah, let me just type in 7-zip here, make it
easy, and utilities, yep.
So we're going to go to the old. Now you might, in Valerie, you're saying you're going to have computers in here that are deep freeze and some that aren't. What I would recommend in this case, well, there's once again, there's a lot of options.
Yeah.
Here is one option, okay? And I'm not going to have any triggers on there right now. We're not going to kick this off. So you've got your one deep freeze schedule, or your one schedule that's going to go to deep freeze and non-deep freeze. Now, remember, you can come over here to auto deployment, and you'll see there's your 7-zip. Double click on that, and for all 7-zip packages or auto deployments, you have pre-steps and you have post-steps. And you can have a pre-step. There's a command, and this command would run your DFC.
So basically, at this point, the command you're going to run is thaw.
Yeah, right? Like you do your system root, and you could also do syswhile, 64 stuff like that if you want for 64-bit. But anyway, system root, system 32.
Situm.
Yeah.
Situm.
DFC.
Dude, it blows me away how much you keep in your mental Rolodex, man.
And then there's the command. Now, one thing about this is you're going to have to pass when you're going to set a machine to thaw or to freeze, you have to pass the password. This is where you would type that in, right, your password. And then it's like, I can't remember, I think it's thaw next boot or something like that. I have to remember. Go to a machine that has DFC and run that with a / mark, and you'll see the usage statements. You will have to have your password in here somewhere, the password. But anyway, thaw next boot. But it's unnecessary to run that on a machine that doesn't have DFC. So this is where you would use like a file condition.
Yep.
In the file condition, you would just say only run this if. Once again, you'd put those same, like system root, which is, system root is the same as windir variable. It's the Windows directory, system root, system32.
And you're going to look for that DFC file.
And then the file is dfc.exe, and you're already saying if it exists. So if it exists, then you've got deep freeze on that computer, then it will run this thaw. If it doesn't exist, mattereth not, it moves on down. Yep. And then your post steps, you would do similar to this, only you would freeze it next boot. Now, so hopefully that answers that part. Now, this does bring it. Do you want to go to another question? Because you said there was
a second part on
part
this?
2 on this one.
Okay, because there's something I want to talk about. An inevitable question people will have with this statement here. They'll be saying, okay, but what if I have auto deployment kicks off like 5 deployments? Is it doing this method? It's going to, for those machines, it's going to thaw. Oh, by the way, you will need to do this. You'll thaw it next boot, do a new step, and do a reboot.
Reboot, yeah. So it's going to basically thaw it, it's going to reboot it, and it's going to install 7-zip.
Very important. You're going to have to do the same exists condition on the reboot. Otherwise, it'll just reboot.
Reboot.
So reboot. Generally, I like to not reboot servers. So
it's a smart move, yeah.
So reboot, put your DFC condition there. That way, it'll only run those if it hits that. But they'll say, well, I don't want this to reboot before it installs every application. Reboot, yada yada. So that's coming up. But go ahead and answer that question. Ask that question.
And part 2 from Valerie B. Is there a more efficient way of handling multiple auto deployment package updates on deep freeze machines? Yeah. If I have to update all 3 versions of Flash, that is 6 reboots. How do we prevent packages from interfering with other packages that are on the same schedule?
Okay, so
ultimately,
go ahead,
I mean,
please.
Really, it boils down to this. You need to set up a window where you would thaw it, then run all your auto deployments at the end of that window, then freeze it, because that's really the only way to do that without rebooting it 6 times.
Yeah, I think it's a great way. It's also good practice, which means Lux would never do it. I like it. Jason and Brig were both basically in choir singing in harmony on this part, and that is, take your schedules, schedule them. Let's say you have a window from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. All your schedules, your auto deployment schedules or whatever, they kick off in that time. And then you have maybe at 10:55, just before that window kicks off, and then at 5:05 or something, you have schedules that run that if there's deep freeze on the computer at 10:55, it will thaw them out, reboot them in thawed. And then at 5:05 or whatever, it will reboot them in frozen. And in that window is when all of your deployments should kick off, and you would not do these pre-steps. Yeah. You would just let that window happen, kick it off. Those people come in the morning, their computers are in a frozen state, and they've had all their updates. That's probably the best practice, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other things you could do would be to use like a nested packages if you want to say, hey, here's my baseline. Or
you could do that, but where you run into issues with that again is when new ones come out, you got to update your nested package. So if you want to do the auto deployment route, this is the way to do it. It's got to be scheduled. So
and you could always attach multiple. You could always attach multiple packages to one schedule, and that the problem with that is how do you determine your targets?
Yeah.
Because if you have Chrome and
Firefox.
Adobe or Adobe Reader all in one schedule, and you're trying to point to just machines that don't have the latest Chrome, you're also pushing out Firefox or Reader, and you may not need that anyway.
Yeah.
Dear Shane and Lex, how do I create a report that shows me all PCs that do not have a specific version of a specific program, e.g., all PCs that do have Google Chrome 54? Dataset may have PCs that have the wrong version or no Chrome at all. Sincerely, Kathleen F.
Keep that question up there for a second. How do I create a report? All PCs that do not have a specific version of a program, e.g., all PCs that do have Google Chrome. Dataset may have PCs that have the wrong version or no version at all. Okay. If you have the collection library, you could create a report off of that. I'm gonna just go there because it'll be fast.
In inventory. Yeah.
Faster. So number one, you want to say the wrong version. We'll go out to internet browsers. We'll do Chrome Enterprise. Chrome Old. Now, these are machines that have Chrome, but they have an old version of Chrome. But they could all have various versions of Chrome. What we're going to do is I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to go to Report, a new report from Collection. That means we're going to take those filters in the collection and automatically add them to this report. When you do it this way, it'll only show by default the computer name, which is fine. If I run this will show me all the computers that have an old version. Now let's add that version. First of all, notice these filters, the same filters that we have in that collection. And notice they are using variables. To expand that variable, you can just kind of highlight over here and see that the variable app name Google Chrome equals Google Chrome. The latest version is that
5.7.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but that's how you can expand that on the fly.
Hover over those and you'll be able to see what the values are.
But let's come over here to columns. We'll add a new column, and we'll do application name, and then we'll add a new column.
Application
version, and just hit run. And you'll see these are all the computers that have Chrome less than what we specified in the variable as the latest version. So if you create your own variable, you remember you do custom variables, define what constitutes the latest version, the latest supported version in your environment, and just
reference
do that.
in your report.
So grab the collection library, because once again, it's a great cheat sheet.
Absolutely.
What we're offering here that the collection doesn't offer is from this report, not only do we know that these computers have an old version of Chrome, we can see what version that is. And yes, we do have some like Costanza that's quite old, version 51.
We got a 48 down there. Check that out.
Rock on. There you go.
Good to know.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Our next question is from Jason C. Dear Shane and Lex, I have 2 domains. My computer is a member of domain.local, and the PDQ service is running on the same domain. I have my account for domain.com under console users. I am unable to send packages cross domains without switching the background service. Why?
First of all, your deploy user, hopefully your deploy user will have membership, or the credentials that you use are also in that domain. If not, you're going to need to create credentials. Your background service can still run on one domain, but your credentials for the other domain would need to be entered. If those credentials do not cross domains, then you're going to have to do
multiple sets.
Yeah, so you would just come over here to your, in this case, to your deploy. I believe it was deploy, right? Okay. Credentials, and under preferences, and you would add credentials. Here you would type in your domain, other domain, whatever, the username, an administrator on that domain with the appropriate password. And then when you deploy to those other domains, the computers in that other domain, you would use those credentials. Now, if you use PDQ inventory,
yeah, I was going to say, save yourself the trouble.
If you use PDQ inventory, it's the same thing. You're going to have to specify in inventory in the same area under your credentials. You're going to have to specify
both sets.
Yes, a domain credential there. But then,
when you add machines from the other domain, you grab those credentials. Inventory is going to store those credentials.
Correct.
And now PDQ will be able to reference the credentials that inventory is using to scan them.
I'm going to do this. Now, it's the same domain, but it's the same process. So I'm going to create 2 credentials here. This one's called the dude. And we'll just test those credentials, make sure that this works. Go out to Costanza. Yep, test is successful. Okay, so now I have 2. So let's say that these, I'm just going to do a grab a handful of these machines. These are in my other domain. I'm just did a multi-select, right-click, go to select scan user, and change that to the other domain credentials, and say OK. Now, when you scan these credentials, it's going to use scan these machines. It's going to use the domain credentials. Why is that important? Because in deploy, depending on what version you have in deploy, when you deploy an application, let's do Google Chrome, an older version, but when you hit deploy, you have the option of saying use the PDQ inventory scan user credentials. That way, you don't have to specify different deployments per.
Yeah,
per
you don't
domain.
have to set up 2 of them. You can do one and let the credentials flow from inventory.
As long as the targets that you're deploying to are in PDQ inventory, it will use the scan user that's been specified there. So that's honestly what I'd recommend.
Yeah.
We have many customers that have multi-domains, and
it is just the epic way to do it. It just saves you so much work.
Unless, once again, you want to have like enterprise admins that your credentials will work across all the domains. Then, if you don't have that, then you're going to have to hit the different domains, the different credentials.
New question from Dougie Fresh K. I've noticed that PDQ is leaving a user profile on each PC it pushes a package to. Is there a quick way to delete this automatically after the install is complete? There is no need to create a desktop/blah blah blah folder for PDQ Deploy. Sincerely, Doug K.
Hey, Doug. All right, what you're talking about, I understand what you're talking about. In fact, I'll just go out to, we'll go out to iCal. And I'm going to go down to, the answer is no, not at this point. But I'm going to show people what they're talking about. I'm going to go out to iCal, go to the admin dollar, which is the share name for Windows. You'll see an admin arsenal directory. If it's ever had a
deployment
or
inventory
whatever,
scan,
you're going to see some leftover stuff here. There's this. That's always going to be there. And then you're talking about the profile. Well, the way that we run this, because we have to run it, we want to run it locally. We don't want to do things remotely. So we actually contact that computer and we generate an on-demand agent. So we say we're agentless. It's because we don't leave the agent on the machine when we're done, but we still want to run this locally. What that means is we copy those necessary PDQ files down to your target. We create a service. That service runs locally as whatever deploy user you specified, and then it kicks off. That does need to create a profile, especially in the cases where you have to change the run as to run as logged on user or run as deploy user interactive. Depending, it's going to have to create a profile. So if you really want to clean those up, there are utilities that you can use. Dell Prof 2 comes to mind. Yeah. But it's just going to be created again, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast when you're dealing with the Windows.
Yeah, it's the way it runs, guys. So sorry about that. Anything else, JJ?
Next question from Stephen V. I seem to have a lot of issues with Adobe Flash for IE Windows 8.1. I tend to have to nuke Windows Update on the machine from Orbit and redeploy, then it works. Is that update in the Windows 8.1 monthly? I can't seem to locate a definitive answer, and that package works great.
I have a lot of issues. Well, it sounds like it's not working great. So you're saying you have to nuke the Windows Update. We have seen cases where when you're applying Windows updates, you kind of have to. It helps to stop the Windows Update service and then let it restart. We do that automatically in like the PowerShell package as well as the Windows updates. We haven't done that in the Flash packages where we stop the Windows Update service and then let this kick off. That sounds like we might need to do that. We haven't heard too many complaints, but what you might want to do, Stephen, if it's only on those Windows 8 computers, you probably use auto deploy because you're awesome. I would have a pre-step that just stops
the service
on that package. It just stops that Windows Update service. Once that package starts getting installed, unless that service is set to disabled, it will start that service back up, and you should be good to go. That's what I would do. I use a pre-step in your auto deploy package for that. And please, people, if you guys are noticing this, let us know, and we will add that to our Flash 8.1 and maybe Flash 10 for IE packages.
Yep.
Dear Shane and Lex, I am initiating MDT OS deploys via PDQ Deploy. It initiates and pushes the OS fine, but PDQ thinks the task failed because the PDQ runner is not on the new OS. Any way to have PDQ catch up after the OS deploy and finish the task and maybe start other tasks/steps? Sincerely, Tom Y.
Hey, Tom, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So basically, when you pass off that OS update, we lose control of when that thing's going to be rebooted. And so as soon as that reboots and, we haven't controlled the reboot, we don't know what to wait for, what to look for at that point on deploy. So catching it when it's done, no, there's really not a way to do it that way.
Yeah, there are some post steps though that you could run a post step, and I haven't used a MDT for so long. I mean, I'm talking MDT in its early incarnations last time I used that. But if you could run a post step, then we've got some videos out there using something like PS exec to call your PDQ deploy server and kick off your deployments. You have maybe a baseline package that's got a bunch of nested packages that constitute a machine's application baseline. You kick that off from PS exec. A caveat there is whatever credentials you're using to kick that off have to be listed as a console user in your credentials. So there are ways to do it, but Lex is right. There comes a point during OS updates and installs where we can't really control the reboots. We can't control we don't know the status of it. Yeah. What I would do is the last step that you could perform before the last reboot is to use PS exec, call out to the console and do that. Now there's also a way you can do it from PowerShell, but there's a couple of extra steps that you have to run. Check out our forums or hit up our support, and they'll send you some links on how-tos for that.
And our final question of the day. Is it possible to set up a trigger where anytime a user logs in, the current user is updated? Sincerely, Michael C.
Hopefully coming soon to a theater near you with some new features that we're adding. And we've got some really big changes, and not necessarily changes, but opportunities or additions that are optional, that will be optional for you. And one of those would be an agent. Now, a lot of you don't like agents. That's fine. Our plan is never to force you to have an agent, but if you want, there will be an agent available at some point in the very near future. You do want that agent. With that agent, that would give us the opportunity to grab those triggers. Right now, it's an on-demand agent, so it's only updated when we scan, for example, when we scan that computer. We don't have a trigger for when a user logs on because we don't have a resident agent out there looking for that. So
it's at the machine level at this point. So your heartbeat trigger when the machine comes on.
Yeah, we have a heartbeat trigger, but not a log-on trigger. That really does require a resident agent, because that agent can then look for certain events, certain triggers, and then report accordingly.
Yep.
So look forward to exciting updates throughout the year.
Now, keep in mind, when we first introduce the agent, it's going to be fairly bare bones.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, it doesn't mean that all these things that an agent can do will be able to be done. It just means we now have the infrastructure, if you choose to use the agent, to give you some of these features as they come out. It's just we have to get that framework ready, tested, out there and in the wild. So, cool. Well, if you guys have any additional questions, definitely send them in to us, our support site. And of course, we do try to do this PDQ A like once a month. Once a month or so. So let Annie know what you're thinking, please. She's always out there looking for suggestions, not only for webcasts but also questions. And a lot of these questions, remember, it is good on the PDQ A if you can submit those questions in advance, because sometimes they just take a little while to...
We can do a little research and be able to show answers.
Or even if we know the answer, but it takes 10 minutes to write out the report, it's better to have that beforehand. So, anyway,
we like to do our homework, so...
Homer. Right. There
Us
you go.
and homework. Yeah.
Happy St. Patty's Day. Green, orange, whatever side you're on, or just color whiskey. That's
Yeah, there you go.
That's what we are. We're
Thanks.
very nonpartisan. We'll just drink the whiskey and we'll toast whatever holiday you want.
You got it.
Rock on, everybody. We'll
Thanks.
talk to
See
you
y'all
later.
later.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. Congratulations to Kathleen F. and Tom Y., winners of vintage PDQ swag. Send us your info at webcast@pdq.com. And please check out our bonus content. Take a moment to take our short antivirus survey. We'd really appreciate that. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here next time.